The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Here's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove podcast. It is all football and all playoffs, NFL playoffs, NFL Week 18 picks, and, of course, the College Football Championship. That's what we're talking about today, and that's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove podcast.
From Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network, you're listening to the Sports Stove podcast with your host, Vince Stover.
Hey, good looking, what you got cooking? How's about cooking something up in me?
Welcome in to an all-new edition of the Sports Stove podcast presented by Righteous Felon Jerky. It's time to join the flavor revolution, and you can do it at righteousfelon.com. Promo code STOVE15 is going to get you 15% off your purchase. You will not regret it. It is the best jerky I've ever had. Great texture, great flavor. You will not be disappointed. righteousfelon.com, promo code STOVE15, STOVE15 for 15% off your purchase if you put in that code at checkout. Welcome into the show. I'm Vince Stover, joined as I am every Wednesday by my dad, Dale Stover. Dad, hey, nice shirt, by the way. We didn't plan this, but matching shirts tonight. But how you doing?
Doing good. Had a good holiday, had a great Christmas and a good New Year's weekend. And, of course, the Packers won. And over the holidays, Santa Claus brought me some Righteous Felon jerky, and I was able to try a new flavor, and it was really good. Actually, I was able to buy some jerky for Christmas presents for some people that I work with. And the response has been very, very positive. So the best jerky they've had. Again, love the texture and love the flavor of it. So it's gone over very, very well. And like I said, if people here watching us, if you like jerky at all, you ought to try Righteous Felon Jerky. It really is a great product. And again, I was very happy with the response I got for the gifts I gave.
Yeah, I mean, I know they're a sponsor on the show, so we wouldn't talk bad about them, but I'm not lying. Like, these packages behind me here, I've eaten all of those. They're empty. And I am a huge fan. I am a forever jerky buyer of Righteous Felon. Absolutely love Righteous Felon. Dad, you got some for Christmas. Ryan Jackson, the co-host of the Local Hour, I took some over to him yesterday. So he got some as well. Yeah, it's a great way, an affordable gift option, but an affordable snack option for yourself as well. So make sure you check it out for sure. We'll get to the Packers in a little bit, but Dad, I want to start with college football, and the college football playoffs went just as everybody expected. The number 1 team versus the number 2 team, right? Alabama goes down in overtime. Texas goes down to the wire, but down as well. Both games incredibly close. That's what you want out of semifinal games. You want close games, and college football gave us 2 close games this weekend. Let's start with Alabama-Michigan. Michigan gets to the title game under Jim Harbaugh. Again, the game came down to it, and at the end of the day, Tommy Rees is getting a lot of flack for his play call. But I mean, I don't know. At the end of the day, it is what it is. The number 1 team in the nation beat the number 4 team in the nation. Alabama did not convert on that quarterback draw, and so they will not be headed back to the championship. How do you think about the just the final outcome of that game? And I'm sure in Ohio, you're getting to hear plenty of grumbling about Michigan being number 1.
Yes, that would be true. Again, it was a great football game, and Alabama could have easily won it. I thought they were going to have a good chance to there. And but like you said, Michigan did play well. Their defense played well. And again, I was definitely for Alabama in that one, which that doesn't happen very often that I'm for Alabama. So I let my grandson that lives in Alabama know that I was actually saying Roll Tide for the first time, and I think he was excited about that. But anyhow, it was like I said, it was a good football game, 2 good teams, and Michigan came out on top. So,
yeah, It's interesting that Michigan and Washington are two teams that I've really not respected a whole lot throughout this year. I picked Michigan to lose to either Penn State or Ohio State. They beat them both. I thought Washington would lose to Oregon in the championship game. I wasn't a believer in either of these teams. But at this point, you got to pick one of them because one of them is going to be the national champion. They did what needed to be done. I think Michigan, outside of Ohio State and Alabama, had an incredibly easy schedule. That's not the I say it's not the discount Michigan. It is the discount Michigan. But they won when they had to. They won every game on the schedule, and they beat Ohio State and they beat Iowa, which is not as hard, and then they beat Alabama here in the playoffs, and that's a big deal for sure. We'll get back to Michigan in a moment, but Washington and Texas also going down to the wire. Texas made a late push, almost scored to win the game. Washington, though, comes out on top. Michael Penix had a great game, and Washington, like I said, I just did not give them the proper respect throughout the season. They just continue to prove me wrong one week after another, and here they sit in the national championship game with a big win over Texas. What do you think about Washington and Texas?
Well, again, another great game. Unfortunately, I didn't stay up and watch that, but I kept up on everything. And, Washington, they've been good all year. And, they have played a good schedule. They've played some tough teams, and they've been able to beat everyone. And so I think this should be a very good football game. And I don't think people could, discount Washington anymore. They're undefeated and they're in a championship. So they've definitely got a good opportunity, I think.
Yeah, Penix has been good. And listen, we kind of like Penix just because of his history with Tom Allen. We're Tom Allen fans at Indiana, or not at Indiana anymore, but Penix was. And, so there's that. But, man, I don't know. I look at this game. My first thought is that Michigan should win this. But I think Michigan is going to have a ton of distractions coming into this game because the Jim Harbaugh to the NFL rumors are alive and well. And that's not going to go away throughout this week, especially as you get into media day and things like that. So let's talk about the matchup, Michigan and Washington. What kind of expectations do you have for this game?
Again, they're both undefeated teams, even though I do think Washington played the tougher schedule. I think it should be a good game. I don't think it should be a blowout on either side. I definitely don't think Michigan, should be able to dominate them. And, Washington the same way. I agree with you. I think there's some distractions probably on Michigan's side. And Washington, in some ways, they're undefeated, but they really have nothing to lose. They've played loose. The fact that they beat Oregon, I think they've proved they can play. Penix, has been great, and he's something that Michigan's going to have to deal with. And so I think Washington's got a great opportunity to win this.
Yeah, I love Corum for Michigan, the running back. I think that he has the game-changing potential where he can just ruin a game for the opposing defense. We saw it against Penn State earlier this year. J.J. McCarthy is one of those guys. I put him in that Brock Purdy, Alex Smith kind of mindset where he can manage a game. I don't think he's going to be the superstar that's going to go out and crush it, but he does enough to win. He's only thrown 4 interceptions all season, but he's also only thrown for 2,800 yards all season. Michael Penix has doubled the yardage, just about, at least, maybe almost exactly. He's got 4,600 yards. He's also got 35 touchdowns and 9 picks. So Penix has been solid, and that's how Washington wins, is through the air mainly. They got 3 phenomenal receivers who'll be playing in the NFL very, very soon. Michigan is that just kind of beat you until you submit. And right now, the popular opinion is that they're the team to beat. Michigan, that is the team to beat. I'm interested to see how it all shakes down. Michigan's a 4.5-point favorite. And the odds are in that area. There's some are a little lower, a little higher, but I don't know, Dad. I'm rooting for Washington. One of the things about this weekend was, okay, I want to be happy that Alabama lost, but Michigan won. So I'm not sure how to feel about that. Uh, but Washington, I don't know. I'm cheering for Washington. I'm not sure that I believe in Washington, but I also don't believe in Michigan. I'll stick with it. One of them's going to win, and I'll congratulate whoever it is. I mean, if I had to pick, I would pick Michigan, but I'd be cheering for Washington. Do you have a prediction or a pick that you want to make?
Well, I'm definitely for Washington, no doubt about that. And I think, I don't think that's going out on a limb too much. I think they have a real great chance to win it. I'm not going to be for Michigan. Again, they're both undefeated, so you can't really argue with that too much.
Right.
Again, I'm excited about next year. You get into a 12-team playoff. I think that will be much better in a lot of ways. I don't know what I said it on the show, but I know we've talked a little bit off air. And, the best team in college football, I don't think is playing in the game on Monday, but that's the way it worked. They lost and in their conference championship, and that's the way it happened. And these two teams are undefeated. But like I said, there's a real disparity as far as the schedule that was played and things like that. But you can only beat who you play. I've often said that. And so you can't fault Michigan for that. And I think, again, the college football bowl, organization, they're excited to have two undefeated teams. And so I think that's good. Like I said, I think there are some distractions. I think Harbaugh to the NFL. I heard somebody on the radio, I think it was either today or yesterday, just question, it's funny that people really talk a lot about New England and the Astros, but yet nobody's talking about Michigan. That's okay. That they got caught with an infraction or whatever. And again, I don't know any of this. It makes me wonder when Harbaugh accepted the penalty and was able to make it to where they wouldn't inspect this anymore. I wonder if there was any discussion about, hey guys, I won't be here next year. So you won't have to worry about me next year on that. We'll never know if that was the case or not, but it does make you wonder. Yeah. But again, Michigan has played well. If they beat Washington in the game, then they'll deserve to win the championship. And if Washington wins, then I'm sure we'll hear about distractions.
Sure. So a couple things on that. There was a lot in that. So first of all, I think comparing them to New England is better than comparing them to the Astros. The Astros cheated in the World Series. New England cheated leading up to a Super Bowl. So a little bit more comparison to that. I think the distraction thing is real. It's just going to get hotter and hotter as the week goes along. I've heard, Harbaugh to I was going to say San Diego, Los Angeles to the Chargers makes a ton of sense for a lot of people involved. It sounds like it's Vegas or the Chargers are the two places that Harbaugh is leaning towards. He hired an agent that has great ties in the NFL. He's been trying to get to the NFL for the last couple of years, and either way, win or lose, now is the time for him to go. And let me say this about Harbaugh going to the pros. I've heard, I listened to Dan Patrick some, and he was going off about, well, if you love Michigan so much, then sign the contract. Well, he's at that point in his life where college coaching is hard. The time constraints, the recruiting, the transfer portal. You don't got to deal with any of that in the NFL. It makes a whole lot of sense, especially for someone his age, but for anybody who has an opportunity to go to the NFL from college, it makes sense to go. It's just an easier gig at the end of the day. And although financially he'd be well covered at Michigan, that's a whole lot of work you got to put in throughout the offseason. And I'm sure he'd be fine with leaving that behind. We'll pay attention on Monday to see what happens. You talked about, I'm assuming you were talking about Georgia being the best team. Yes. And I would agree with you. But without a doubt, the two most deserving teams have made it to this point, 14-0 And I'm a big believer in that needing to be rewarded. And they'll fight it out at the end of the day. I think TV ratings would have been a million times higher with Alabama and Texas, but Michigan and Washington roll into the College Football National Championship on Monday night, 7:30, to determine who will be the champ of the college football season. All right, and we'll talk more about coaches and things like that on another episode, but let's transition into the NFL. And there is so much on the line this week, Dad, from a number of games. And we'll go through our picks in a few minutes. But first of all, I want to kind of talk through the games of great importance. Let's start with the AFC South. The Texans and the Colts will play each other. One of those teams will at the very least be tied for the best record in the South, if not hold the best record and win the South. But Texans and Colts play on Saturday night, which will set things up for the Jaguars and Titans on Sunday. The Jaguars will know who they've got to beat. Will know all the tiebreakers, all that kind of stuff will be determined. And with the Jags playing the Titans, the Titans aren't going to just be pushed over either. So the AFC South is full of fun games this weekend. But there's other games with playoff implications, and not all of them have implications for both teams, but several that have implications for one team. But before we get to that, the one that does have implications for both teams is the Sunday night game, Buffalo and Miami, Dad. Buffalo, if they win the division, which didn't look like they were going to be able to do a couple of weeks ago. And here they sit, one win away from the division. The Dolphins, of course, if they win the division. And I hope it's not a sign of things to come, but Tyreek Hill's house was on fire today. So we'll see how all that shakes down. I don't want us to get too much into the games right now as far as picking them and things like that. But that being said, for the last week of an NFL season, Dad, there's enough games to watch this weekend, right?
Yes, and the NFL has to be happy with that.
Yeah.
We kind of saw 3 weeks ago that the last 2 weeks were going to mean something. Everybody was not going to be settled because not only are who's in the playoffs not settled, but the seeding is definitely not settled. And that makes a big difference when you're talking about playing at home and in some of these matchups, who you're going to play. The lower seeded wild card team, I'm sure, would be much better off playing certain teams than they would other ones. And all that's going to go here. And the way, it'd be easy to look at it and say, well, this looks pretty sure this is how it'll go. But the way the NFL season is gone, and, I don't think you can tell at all. There may be some real surprises. People getting knocked out or people getting moved around there. So I don't think as you look at it, there's just a lot of prediction of, well, this definitely should be how it is, or, it only be because of a big upset. There's a lot of things up in the air. And again, of course, it always gets tricky, and we'll talk about this in our picks in a little bit, but when a team doesn't have anything to play for,
right,
then, do they rest players? Do they rest quarterbacks? And sometimes the NFL, you've had the whole schedule pretty much with people being rested. That's why fantasy football ends usually a week earlier. That may not be as big a deal this year. There will be some teams that do that, but maybe not as many as normally do. So it'll be a fun weekend. And I think the fact that it's all on Saturday and most of it's on Sunday, that's good. Of course, then they'll have everything shook out for the playoffs starting the next Saturday.
Yeah, and when you look at the lines, you can tell who's sitting guys and who's not because the lines are flipped a little bit in some of those. Of course, the NFC South is also vying for a champ. The Buccaneers, they hold all the tiebreakers. So if they beat Carolina, they win the division. But all they had to do was beat the Saints last week, and they would have won the division. So now if the Buccaneers lose and the Saints win, the Saints are the division champs. Atlanta, if they win and the Bucs lose, I believe Atlanta would make it as well. So plenty of things happening and going on in the South divisions of both conferences throughout this week. The number one seeds are clinched. San Francisco and Baltimore are there. They will be sitting some guys. Other than that, you've got Cleveland. I think Cleveland is, well, there's a little bit. They could be the 3 seed, but they seem like they're going to be sitting some guys as well, getting some rest on guys. Kansas City has really nothing to play for. It could affect seeding, but we'll see how it all shakes down. Dallas and Philadelphia is a big one. They're still fighting for the division win, and Philadelphia is playing New York, and Dallas is playing Washington. And so I mean, there's big ones on that too. So there's a lot of games that mean something. The only playoff spot that's left in the NFC is one spot. Green Bay holds everything they need to hold there, the cards, I guess. If they win, they're in. They could still even make it up to a 6 seed as a possibility as well. But that being said, whoever wins the South is in, of course, as well. And potentially, if Tampa and New Orleans win and Green Bay loses, New Orleans could still make the playoffs as well. I think I'm trying to think if because they would hold So there's a lot on the line. Minnesota technically still has a shot to make it. Atlanta has a shot to make it. But I guess Seattle hasn't clinched, have they? I thought Seattle had clinched. They have not clinched a playoff spot, so they need a win this week as well. Lots on the line there. Let's jump into these games, though, and take a look at them. And we're going to pick 6 of them again this week. We'll pick the 2 of the primetime games, and then 4 games of our own choosing. Let me pull up my picks real quick. So let's start with Saturday night. And the Saturday games, there's 2 Saturday games, as you mentioned earlier. The first one is Steelers-Ravens at 4:30 in the afternoon. Again, the Ravens hold the 1 seed, and they are going to sit guys. The primetime game on Saturday is Houston and Indianapolis at Indianapolis. And Houston, a 1-point favorite on the road, Dad. I'm sorry. And we're using Run Your Pool. They're a 0.5 favorite. And a little intrigued by that being on the road in Indianapolis. How do you feel about that game?
Again, we've been happy with Houston all year long, and I think I'll go with Houston on this, even though they're on the road. I think they've played better and more consistently, and of course it'll be huge for either team to make the playoffs. But I'm going to go with. I've been for Houston kind of since they started looking good early in the year, and C.J. Stroud is back now, and so I'm going to go with Houston and hope they win that one.
I'm probably cheering for Houston. I'm going to pick Indianapolis though at home. That has to mean something. And man, I'm okay with either of these teams. I cheer for either one of them once the playoffs start. But that being said, I'm going to pick Indianapolis, if for no other reason, just to try to catch up with you in the picks for the season. But I think it's going to be a really good game. I think it should be close, come down to the end. And if Gardner Minshew can keep from making mistakes, and if C.J. Stroud can stay healthy, it should be a phenomenal game. So I'm looking forward to it. But I have been on the Jonathan Taylor train since before he was drafted. I was screaming and shouting, everybody needs to draft Jonathan Taylor. I think he's a difference maker too. And I think the Indy defense is better than the Houston defense. So that's why I'm going to go Indianapolis versus Houston on that game on Saturday evening. Sunday night is the Bills and the Dolphins. Another interesting line. The Bills on the road are 2.5-point favorites against the Dolphins in Miami for the division. How do you go Buffalo and Miami?
This was an interesting one because again, I like Miami and they've played well. They've struggled a little bit, down the line here. And Buffalo, we felt like at the start of the year they were one of the class teams in the AFC, and then they struggled a little bit. But I think they've got everything going in the right direction now. So I'm going to go with Buffalo, the favorite, 2.5, even though it's on the road at Miami. This should be a great game. and again, a lot on the line, but I just don't see how I can pick against Buffalo in this one.
Man, for the last couple of years, I have been trashing on Tua, and I've been told by you I was wrong. And now tonight, you're telling me you don't believe in Tua, and you picked the Bills. I picked the Bills too. I don't believe in Tua, and I'm going with Buffalo also. I was surprised, though, that they're the favorites heading into Miami. Yeah. And I know Miami's a little banged up, but Dad, do you know the one player who has made the difference in Buffalo? I'll give you a hint. He was traded to Buffalo in Week 9.
Yes, then that would be Rasul Douglas. I know he's played extremely well. I've heard that from the Packer guys there, and I'm happy for him about that. You know, he had a great career there at Green Bay, coming off the practice squad, getting picked up. I'm glad he's doing well for Buffalo, and I know he has made a difference there. You know, the guy that's going to make the difference in this game is Josh Allen, and so we'll see.
I mean, you say that, but I'll tell you what, if Rasul Douglas can shut down Tyreek Hill, get an interception, pick 6. He's had 6 turnovers since being in Buffalo. I mean, the guy has been amazing, and he'll be a difference maker in this game for sure. All right, so that's our 2 games, primetime games. Let's get to the other games. We got 4 games left to pick. I'll start with you. Who's your 3rd game of the week?
I will take New Orleans at home over Atlanta, 3.5. Again, I've said it all along that I think New Orleans will win the division. Tampa's in a much better spot right now, but I definitely think New Orleans at home should beat Atlanta. And even 3.5, it could be within a field goal. But I've lost a few games by that half point this year. But I'll go with New Orleans in this one.
Man, I did not pick this game. New Orleans should win. I 100% agree with you on that. I don't know that they will win. Back on November 26th, Falcons won 24-15. Yes, it was in Atlanta, but still, I've picked one NFC South team throughout the year, and that was Atlanta. I'm not changing that now. It's not Atlanta, Tampa, excuse me. I don't trust New Orleans as far as I can throw them. They're banged up too. Kamara got hurt last week. Atlanta, I mean, they can't be trusted. Don't get me wrong. You cannot trust Atlanta. But I stayed away from this game because I think those are 2 teams that could go off or 2 teams that could score 0 points. So I'm interested to see how that one shakes out for sure. You got coaches playing for their jobs in that game. Arthur Smith, he might get fired anyhow. But if it doesn't look good on Sunday, I think Arthur Smith is gone. And I really think New Orleans needs to change coaches. And I don't know if they will, but I think they should. And we'll see how it shakes out. My 3rd game, Dad, is a game we talked about briefly earlier, Jacksonville and Tennessee. I'm going Tennessee in this one, 4.5-point underdogs. This has the potential to be a field goal game. Tennessee is so annoying. They always just, especially when they're out of it, they just seem to stay in games and just be a pain in the tush to whoever they're playing. This is a conference game. This is a 2 teams that when I lived in Nashville area did not get along. I would prefer Jacksonville win. I'd like to see him in the playoffs again. I'd like to see Josh Allen, the edge rusher. He set a record this year for sacks in a season by a Jaguar. I like Trevor Lawrence. I like Etienne. I like the receiving core, whatever. I just can't trust Jacksonville right now. I'm going to pick Tennessee in this game to cover at 4.5-point underdogs. How do you feel about that game?
Again, I did not pick this game, but if I would have, I probably would have picked Tennessee. Again, I'm with you. I hope Jacksonville wins this one, but Tennessee is one of those teams that can really give you trouble when you're in a situation like this. And there's a few games this week where the biggest thing that can happen is they can ruin somebody else's season, and that's one of them. And the Titans, again, there's history with Titans and Jacksonville. And, that'll be the motivation there. So I did not pick this game, but I probably would have had to pick Tennessee if I did.
I'm looking up right now. Tennessee this year is 6-9-1 against the spread, which is probably down from what they've done in the past. Jacksonville, on the other hand, is 9-7 against the spread, for what it's worth. But Detroit and Baltimore lead the season at 11-5 as well. So there you go. I'm still going with Tennessee, and I hope I'm wrong in this situation. All right, who's game number 4 for you this week?
I will take the Lions over the Vikings. The Lions at home by 3.5. Again, the Lions do have a little bit to play for here. This could affect their seeding. Minnesota, they mathematically have a chance, but boy, you've got to be a real math whiz to come up with this. I was with some Viking fans the other day, the other night at the game, and when they were showing the stat on TV of what it took, the guy was just rolling, saying, "I can't believe, wow, that's incredible." So I'll go with Detroit again. I don't necessarily like Detroit, don't really trust them, but I don't think Minnesota is in a spot there. And being at Detroit, I'll go with Detroit 3.5 in this one.
I considered that one, Dad, and I would have picked Detroit also. I did not pick this game. That's the direction I would have gone. Even if Detroit decides to kind of mail it in a little bit, they're probably still better than Minnesota and should beat them by more than a field goal. So I wouldn't be surprised in this game if you just see Detroit get so far ahead that they start bringing in subs later in the game. I don't think this game's going to be close at all. Let's see here. Game number 5. No, my game number 4. Why not? I've been on the Baker train all year. They're playing Carolina. Surely they're going to dominate this game, right? I mean, surely. They're going to win the division and dominate Carolina. I've been saying they're going to win the division. 5.5 points. That should be easy for Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans to do. So I got Tampa in this game. I just feel like, they got to have it. And I don't see any reason why they shouldn't win by at least a touchdown. So I'm going to go Tampa, 5.5 point favorites on the road in Carolina for the division championship, at least for Tampa. How do you feel about that game?
Yeah, Tampa should win this one. Again, Carolina has nothing to play for outside of trying to ruin, Tampa's season. They've already secured the number 1 draft pick for Chicago, which is unfortunate. And Tampa ought to win this. They ought to be able to take care of this. Carolina has beat some people and been scary in a couple games, but Tampa shouldn't have any trouble.
Yeah, Tampa is the 3rd best team this year against the spread. Carolina, the worst team. So I feel pretty comfortable about this pick. All right, game number 5 for you. Who are you picking?
I'm going to go with a team here, an underdog, because they're sitting people. But I almost had to take one of those to see how many games was left. And I'm going to take Kansas City over the Chargers. I know that Kansas City is going to sit some people, but can the Chargers beat somebody there at home? I'm going to go with Kansas City. The backup's rallying here and be able to handle the Chargers. So I'm going to pick Kansas City, even though they're, let's see, what is it, 1.5 underdog.
Yeah, if you can't beat Easton Stick, even with your backups, there's probably problems. Blaine Gabbert, the quarterback for Kansas City this week. So there's a Blaine Gabbert sighting. I assume at least he's the quarterback. I think he's the second string over Chris Oladukum. You should be able to win that game. They got the running back shouldn't have any issues. The receivers, the starters can't even catch a pass. So maybe if they put in bench guys, they'll actually start receiving as well. I think that's probably a safe pick. I didn't pick that one myself, but that's an interesting one for sure. Let's see here. I went with Philadelphia over New York. Again, New York has been playing a little bit better. Philadelphia has not been playing that well. But I trust the veterans in Philadelphia to get things right here before the playoffs. They can win the division as well. I think they need Dallas to lose in order to win the division. But still, Philadelphia here, 5.5 points over New York. New York's going to be fighting to be a spoiler here, but I just think Philadelphia's the better team. So I'm going to go Philadelphia on the road as 5.5-point favorites. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think Philadelphia should win this one. Again, 5.5 and being a division game. I stayed away from it just because of that. I think the Giants could cover in this one with it being a division game, but I'm for Philadelphia, and I think they'll win it, but I'm not sure they'll cover it, so I stayed away from that one.
All right. So who's your last game then of the week that you picked?
My last game, I'll need to go with Green Bay over Chicago. Being we're at home again, Green Bay has been inconsistent. Played great last week. It looks like I looked today as far as the people that practiced. Looks like we're going to get a lot of people, maybe most everybody back that we can. And the offense is definitely clicking there in Green Bay. It's at home. They were in this same situation last year. They were at home and could have made the playoffs, and they didn't. So I think they're focused on this. The Bears, have played better, and you hear that their defense is playing better, and so I looked at their schedule because I was just a little interested in that. The Bears have 7-9, and they have beat one team that's going to be in the playoffs. And that was Detroit. And I think that's the only team that's going to be in the playoffs. So now they did play tough against Cleveland. But otherwise, I know they've won some games and they've looked better, but the competition they played have been a little bit different. And Green Bay, I think, is playing, definitely well on offense. The defense played well last week. These are two teams that are very familiar with each other. You have to guard DJ Moore, and you have to keep an eye on the quarterback running. And if you don't do that, then you don't deserve to win. And our defensive coordinator does not always catch on to things like that. But I think there'll be a lot of emphasis this week on that. And, of course, I definitely hope they'll win. It'd be great for these young players to get a playoff game experience, at least one. And like you said, if they win, there's a good possibility they could get the number 6 seed if the Rams lose. So we will see. But I'll pick Green Bay 3.5 over Chicago.
All right. So thankfully in Run Your Pool, it is 3.5. It's 3 other places. That half point scares me. I did not pick this game. I wouldn't be shocked if it's a field goal game as well when it comes down to it. I'd like to think Green Bay wins. The Bears, I don't know what they're doing by riling things up. I mean, they've been talking for the last 3 weeks now about what they're going to do when they come to Green Bay, and I just don't understand. I don't understand that philosophy. Now, Justin Fields, leading rusher for Chicago. He would be the leading rusher in Green Bay too if he played for Green Bay. He's got more yards, touchdowns, all that good stuff, less carries. And still, he's had a dominant year. I like Justin Fields. I really hope the Packers win this game, but I did not pick this game. So I went with a big underdog. Washington, 13.5-point underdogs to Dallas. Yes, Dallas needs to win, but again, you're talking about a division game on the road. 13.5 points is a whole lot of points. Can Dallas blow them out by 30? Sure. Will they, though, is the question. So I went with Washington in this game to play spoiler against Dallas this week, or at the very least cover 13.5. I don't know. Did you consider that game?
No, again, it was, it is a lot of points, but Dallas, if Dallas loses this one, now again, it's a division game, and it's always a big rivalry game with Washington, but they've got everything in hand. They haven't lost at home this year. They can get, home field for a couple games, potentially at least one game. And I just, if they can't get focused for this one, Washington may challenge them for a little while, but, they ought to be able to handle it. 13.5's a lot, so maybe Washington can stay within 10 or within a touchdown. But that'll be a real disappointment for Dallas if that's the case. Of course, all they have to do is win, and they can win the division. So we'll see.
All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to wrap up the rest of the NFL schedule and wrap up our episode today. But first, a quick word from Righteous Felon Jerky. Say hello to America's most wanted craft beef jerky. Over 15 flavors with all kinds of character. The #1 jerky gift box and all natural black Angus quality made right here in the US of A. Taste the flavor revolution at righteousfelon.com. Use the promo code STOVE15 at checkout. That's righteousfelon.com. Promo code STOVE15 at checkout. Welcome back into the Sports Stove podcast presented by Righteous Felon Jerky. And we're going to wrap up the NFL schedule for the final week of the NFL regular season. We'll talk about games that we have yet to talk about. And let's start with the Battle of Ohio, Cincinnati and Cleveland. Cincinnati is the favorite in this game by a fair amount, actually. And so that's signs of the Browns sitting people. Of course, I would assume Cincinnati needs a win in order to have a chance at the playoffs. Cleveland's already punched their ticket. I mean, I guess I have not seen who's playing in Cleveland. So I don't know. I wouldn't even know where to go with this game. Any thoughts on Cleveland, Cincinnati?
Well, based on the spread and everything, then, yeah, I would assume Cleveland sitting people. A little surprising just because this really is a rivalry game from here. And, of course, Cincinnati, I don't think is going to be able to edge into the playoffs. And Cleveland, I think, has played real well. It'll be real interesting to see them in the playoffs. But, yeah, it's hard to know where to go on that. I was real surprised when I saw the line. I said, oh, people must not be playing for Cleveland. And but I know whoever is playing for Cleveland, they're really going to go after it because of the rivalry here. But the game is in Cincinnati, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
in Cincinnati, so we'll see how that one shakes down. I mean, even with some guys, I mean, if Flacco sits, I mean, it's no different than what they were doing before Flacco got there. So, I mean, there's all kinds of potential in that game. And Cincinnati has kind of been a disappointment, not kind of. Even with Jake Browning, I feel like they've been a disappointment. And we'll see how that one shakes out. Let's see here. Jets and Patriots. Both of us stayed away from this game also. I was going to pick the Jets in this one, Dad. They're the underdogs in New England. And I think New England needs to lose more than they need to win. So that's why I was going to pick the Jets. I ended up not picking it in our picks, but I mean, I don't see why the Jets can't win this game in New England.
Yeah, again, I mean, this is a tricky game with it being division, and I can see Belichick going out in a blaze of glory here, and I have no faith in the Jets either. So, yeah, I don't think it's going to draw a big viewership, and but it will have draft implications for sure.
Does Robert Saleh get fired if he loses to the Patriots this week?
I wouldn't think so, but I don't know. Aaron Rodgers is trying to rally the troops there. I've heard for weeks that there's a chance that the Jets ownership will blow this up and get rid of the coach, get rid of the GM, and start afresh and go another direction. I wouldn't think that would be the case, but I don't know. If that does happen and Saleh gets fired, I know a great place where he could be defensive coordinator. So we will see.
So that's kind of where I was getting, I suppose. It's interesting because he's a defensive guy, and they have what should be a good defense, and they got 10 losses, and their defense is middle of the road. Right now, like right in the middle of the NFL rankings. Man, I don't know that he's done enough to save his job, win or lose. Honestly, I mean, if he gets fired, they can still go out and get a guy Rodgers likes. So I'm not sure. I don't know. I find it interesting. There's a couple different rankings out there as far as defensive rankings go, but man, I don't know. I'm interested to see what happens with the coaching carousel in the New York, especially. Let's see here. We talked about Atlanta, New Orleans, Jacksonville, Tennessee, Seattle, Arizona. We haven't talked about Arizona again. If they want to hold on to a better draft pick, then they need to lose. But they seem content with their quarterback right now, and so they don't need the number 1 spot, which they're not going to get. They may not need the number 2 spot. If they settle in the number 3 spot, they might be right where they need to be to get the guy they want. They play Seattle. Seattle needs a win to secure a spot in the playoffs and to be the 6th seed. They could lose and still technically make it, possibly, I think. But at the end of the day, Arizona has been a really intriguing team since Kyler Murray came back. How do you feel about Seattle and Arizona?
Well, Seattle needs to win. I don't remember looking, where is this game at?
Arizona.
Seattle needs to win, and Seattle still has a shot at the playoffs, if Green Bay loses. And but I think, Arizona's scary because they've definitely not tanked. I mean, they've definitely played well. And of course, when they beat the Eagles there, and they've played tough, and they can put some points up on the board. But again, Seattle's been a good team in a lot of ways, been disappointing the last few weeks. So I don't know which way this game will go. That's a hard one to call. Definitely, I didn't want to pick it because you just don't know.
Yeah. So the Seahawks win. Let's see here. This says the Seahawks win and Green Bay loses, or the Seahawks tie and Green Bay loses, and Tampa loses or ties, and the Seahawks tie and Green Bay and New Orleans both lose. So the Seahawks they have to win. I mean, they're going to miss out if they don't win. So that's interesting. I thought they were a little bit more secure than that. But yeah, Arizona, I mean, they've been playing really good football, and I think they're going to go out and try to win this game. And I think there's a really good chance of them winning this game the way they've been playing as of late. But you get the big win against Philadelphia. Maybe this one you kind of slack off on too. So I wouldn't be surprised either way. Let's see here. You picked the Chiefs over the Chargers, so we talked about that. Denver travels to Vegas. Nobody cares about this game, but the Broncos and the Raiders. Raiders are the favorite in this game. Russell Wilson fiasco has happened. The Raiders are still playing Aiden O'Connell. I could care less how this game goes, so I haven't put any thought into it. Any thoughts on Denver and Vegas?
Well, it's a big game for Vegas, I think, for their coach, because I think if they continue to win and they can win out here, he may very well get the coaching job. He may anyhow. Denver is kind of, imploded. Weeks ago, they might win, they might definitely be in the playoffs, and then that's kind of gone away. And then, of course, they've had the thing with Russell Wilson, which I'm not sure I understand that at all, but we will see. They're not going to get the super highest draft pick, but there are a lot of quarterbacks coming out this time. We'll talk a lot more about that when the draft comes there. But, Vegas being a favorite doesn't surprise me. I think they have more motivation.
The last game that we haven't covered is the Rams and the 49ers. It's at San Francisco, and San Francisco is the favorite. The Rams are a team that in the playoffs, I'm not sure anybody's excited to play against. They've been playing really good football as of late. Stafford's been on fire. Puka Nacua has been awesome. Cooper Kupp's been really good again, and the defense has found its legs also. This game doesn't really mean much for either team, really. I don't even think I think the Rams are pretty well set in where they're going to be. So maybe if they win, they could move up a spot. But at the end of the day, I don't think there's much to this one. So I don't know. Any thoughts on Rams 49ers?
Well, if the Rams want to stay in the number 6 spot, then they need to win this, because, again, if Green Bay wins and the Rams lose, they will drop to the 7th, and that may make a difference in who you play here. It'd be interesting to see how San Francisco attacks this, because, again, it is a conference game. I've heard some people say, well, San Francisco has nothing to play for. The Rams can win this. I don't know about that. I mean, again, and when you got a team that's got an awesome defense, we'll see how that goes. And it was interesting that San Francisco is the favorite in this. So it will be a good game, no doubt about it.
So, yeah, for some reason I've been all messed up with my Seattle thoughts. I thought Seattle. I don't know what I was thinking with Seattle. I was thinking Seattle was ahead of the Green Bay. They're not. They're below Green Bay. Hence the reason they've got to win to get in. So yes, you're right. The Rams could drop down, but I think that the most likely scenario. So the Packers have the tiebreaker over the Rams.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
so
because
yeah,
they beat them head to head.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, so there you go. And so, but I mean, right now, let's talk about this. Matchups. We're Packer fans. Who do you want to play? The options are Dallas and Detroit and Philadelphia at this point.
I think Detroit would be the number one pick, no doubt about that. Philadelphia might be, depends how they play this week because they haven't played as well. From there, being a Packer fan and loving history, love to go to Dallas and be their first home loss of the year and knock them out of the playoffs. But I don't know for sure that can happen. So probably Detroit would be the preference there. But again, I think for Green Bay just to get into playoffs and be playing well and play competitive, that will be, that will add for a successful year, no doubt about it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm with you though. I'd rather play Detroit over Dallas and Philly. Going to Dallas though doesn't really scare me. I mean, at this point, anything like you said, once we make the playoffs, that's all that matters. Everything else is all cherry on top. We win anything in the playoffs, cherry on top. Now, I predicted 5 weeks ago, that if the Packers made the playoffs, they're going to the Super Bowl. I really didn't think they were going to make the playoffs. So, anyways, yeah, a road through Dallas would be a lot of fun. Go beat up on McCarthy. Go get a win there in Dallas. It'd be like good old days back in the day doing it. We've seen Favre do it. We've seen Rodgers do it. It'd be a good time. Detroit, same thing. I'd get a lot of joy over beating Detroit in the playoffs. I think that would be a lot of fun also. And Philadelphia is probably the team that scares me the most because I feel like what they do, the Packers have struggled with defensively against that kind of offense. So that would be why I would really prefer not to play Philadelphia. But if this, like you said, if we make the playoffs, that's really all that matters there. And then if you look at Dallas and Philly, Dad, one of them is going to be the 5 seed, and they're going to travel to either Tampa or New Orleans. I mean, would you rather be the 2 seed or the 5 seed? Even though the 2 seed's at home, you get a chance to play Tampa or New Orleans. You might say, well, it's not the end of the world going on the road.
No, whoever loses the division there definitely won't be the end of the world. They'll have a game. They may even be favored in that game, I would think. But I think both Philly and Dallas would rather have home field. No doubt about that. And they'll be playing a lower seeded team also, even though, playing, being the 5th seed, playing whoever they're going to play in the 4th seed is going to be a good situation, you would think.
Pittsburgh still has a chance to make the playoffs in the AFC, although theirs is a little bit further off, a little bit harder, I believe. Let's see here. Houston has a tiebreaker over them. Indianapolis has the tiebreaker over them as well. So I guess they're in trouble. It's going to be hard for them to get in. And then we've already talked about Houston, Jacksonville, and Indianapolis. One of them wins the division. The other one, if they win, if Jacksonville wins, then the winner of Houston, Indianapolis is probably in the playoffs. And if Jacksonville loses, there's still a chance that Jacksonville makes the playoffs as well. But that'd be a lot harder of a situation for sure. I'm trying to think through Let's see here. Jacksonville has the tiebreaker over Indy and Houston, so they would be in over the loser of the Indianapolis-Houston game. But that's where Pittsburgh, I think, could step in and get into the playoffs as well. So there you go. Interesting. A wild week of football coming up this week between the NFL playoffs and the college football championship. And you know what you need to watch these games? You need some beef jerky. So join the flavor revolution at righteousfelon.com. Use the promo code STOVE15 at checkout for 15% off your purchase. Dad, any closing thoughts before we shut it down tonight?
No, it's going to be a great weekend in the NFL. Again, this has come down to be exciting. And really, we're focused on this last week, but it's going to be a very interesting playoffs for a couple of weeks. So it's going to do with the teams that are getting in there and just see how everything goes. So I think it's going to be a great week, for the NFL. Of course, we've got the college football championship will also be done before we get here the next time. And, of course, a lot of things happening in college football, with the portal and all the talk with the fiasco that a lot of the bowls were and things like that. And, of course, we'll be talking about the draft before long. Like you said, there's going to be great games on Sunday, but this will be an interesting Black Monday. And to see, what the coaching changes happen from there. And then it'll be interesting to see, who gets the opportunities and who moves around from there. So I don't know, it could be not very much activity. Of course, you already got 3 coaches you're looking for, but could be a lot. You never know, could be some surprises. So
yeah, it definitely could be. We'll see. It's going to be interesting to see how it shakes down, and we'll talk about and react to the coaches being fired and what's going on there as we get to it next week. And a couple things about the show. Reminder that in a week from Sunday, the Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show kicks off. Kevin Wilson will join me, and we'll get everything rolling in Major League Baseball. We'll talk Major League Baseball news. We'll start up our rankings real soon as well and get everybody ready for the fantasy baseball season. So that starts off Sunday, January the 14th, 8 p.m. on YouTube, the Sports Stove podcast. And, of course, as well on Belly Up Fantasies Facebook page and Belly Up's YouTube page as well. Then our local hour continues. We're going to start looking into EKU baseball as well. Let's get into baseball season. EKU baseball, its first pitch is February the 16th. So we're going to start talking to the baseball coaches and players and having them on the program. That'll be Monday night at 8 p.m. As well. Follow us on social media at Sports Stove on Twitter and Instagram. Don't forget to get you some jerky, righteousfelon.com. Use that promo code STOVE15. He's Dale Stover. I'm Vince Stover. Thanks for tuning into this edition of the Sports Stove podcast. Until next time, we'll see you around the Sports Stove.